Welcome to OLCU 632 Week 7. This is the class that we were scheduled for, and we needed to do a little bit of makeup work in regard to. So let's get started into today's lesson and what we want to cover. And think back to what we covered last week and what was significant. You have some notes there that you've been able to pull together. And I think it's important to note, not just in this class or this particular class, but in all your classes, to collectively review your notes so that you can see how they tie together from week to week to help build a stronger bond in the course of the class. So Brian, in the Riding the Dragon book, has a lot to say at this stage in the class about a number of things. And I'm going to take one of these examples, but I'm going to pose some food for thought for you. And so he talks about rhythmic intelligence, media deprivation, and then taking time outs. And a lot of this thought process that he has at this point is really about authenticity and understanding how to be authentic so that you can seek this balance and this effectiveness that is so important in being successful in the way of leadership. And so what does he say, for example, about timeouts? And you can read through the example that he gave you in the book, somewhere around page 235 or so. But I think what's more important is for you to step back for a second and contemplate what it is that he's trying to say to us. And I think that Brian is trying to say that as you take time throughout the course of your day to schedule your day, you should also take time to schedule time out or time away from your normal day-to-day routine. And that's important as it relates to also rhythmic intelligence and especially media deprivation. So are we making that time that allows us to have freedom or this escape from the normally what we do and what we go through? So that's a big point in this whole discussion around authenticity. And I think that it's important when we look at innovation and leadership to think about how are we constantly pushing the envelope to be creative. So I've got a video here, and what I want to do is I want to actually pull it up and give you a preview to it. And this is Steve Johnson, and he's speaking to things of where ideas come from. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of this piece, and then I want you to go and find it.
Just a few minutes ago, I took this picture about 10 blocks from here. This is the Grand Cafe here in Oxford. I took this picture because this turns out to be the first coffee house to open in England in 1650. That's its great claim to fame. And I wanted to show it to you not because I want to give you the kind of, Starbucks tour of historic England, but rather because the English coffee house was crucial to the development and spread of one of the great intellectual flowerings of the last 500 years, what we now call the Enlightenment. And the coffee house played such a big role in the birth of the Enlightenment, in part because of what people were drinking there, right? Because before the spread of coffee and tea through British culture, what people drank, both elite and mass folks drank day in and day out from dawn until dusk, was alcohol, right? Alcohol was the daytime beverage of choice. You would drink a little beer with breakfast and have a little wine at lunch, a little gin, particularly around 1650, and top it off with a little beer and wine at the end of the day. That was the healthy choice, right? Because the water wasn't safe to drink. And so effectively, until the rise of the coffee house, you had an entire population that was effectively drunk all day. And you can imagine what that would be like, right, in your own life, and I know this is true of some of you, if you were drinking all day and then you switched from a depressant to a stimulant in your life, you would have better ideas. You would be sharper and more alert. And so it's not an accident that a great flowering of innovation happened as England switched to tea and coffee. But the other thing that makes the coffee house important is the architecture of the space. It was a space where people would get together from different backgrounds, different fields of expertise, and share. It was a space, as Matt Ridley talked about, where ideas could have sex, right? This was their conjugal bed, in a sense. Ideas would get together there. And an astonishing number of innovations from this period have a coffee house somewhere in their story. I've been spending a lot of time thinking about coffee houses for the last 5 years because I've been on this quest to investigate this question of where good ideas come from. What are the environments that lead to unusual levels of innovation, unusual levels of creativity? What's the kind of environmental, what is the space of creativity? And what I've done is I've looked at both environments like the coffee house, I've looked at like media environments like the World Wide Web that have been extraordinarily innovative. I've gone back to the history of the first cities. I've even gone to biological environments like coral reefs and rainforests that involve unusual levels of biological innovation. And what I've been looking for is shared patterns, kind of signature behavior that shows up again and again in all of these environments. Are there recurring patterns that we can learn from, that we can take and kind of apply to our own lives or our own organizations, our own environments, to make them more creative and innovative? And I think I've found a few. But what you have to do to make sense of this and to really understand these principles is you have to do away with a lot of the way in which our kind of conventional metaphors and language steers us towards certain concepts of idea creation, right? We have this very rich vocabulary to describe moments of inspiration, right? We have the kind of the flash of insight, the stroke of insight, we have epiphanies, we have eureka moments, we have the light bulb moments, right? All of these concepts, as kind of rhetorically florid as they are, share this basic assumption, which is that an idea is a single thing. It's something that happens often in a wonderful, illuminating moment. But in fact, what I would argue, and what you really need to kind of begin with, is this idea that an idea is a network on the most elemental level, right? I mean, this is what is happening inside your brain. An idea, a new idea, is a new network of neurons firing in sync with each other.
So that's the start of the video. I'd like you to take a look at it. Again, you can see on the screen, it's Steve Johnson, where good ideas come from. It's a TED Talk, should be very easy to find, about 900,000 views. And take that time to finish out the rest of that, because I think it's very thought-provoking, and it falls right in line with what we're looking at in the way of what Brian talks about in regard to this lesson. So let's shift back to the actual lecture in regard to this. And so we want to also think about some other things, because Brian also talks about learning and teaching, becoming or getting current, and owning our ambition. And what is he saying here? Again, not literally in regard to what you see in the printed text that's presented in front of you, but more in a summarization of what he is collectively trying to pull together for us and get us to think about. And you know, when you talk about learning and teaching, you talk about becoming current, you're talking about owning your ambition, you're talking about taking control of your own destiny, putting yourself in a position of leadership that is effective, and being a productive provider, whether it's at work or at home or both or collectively. And so it's beyond what's there just in front of us. And that's where I think that the more thought-provoking aspect of this whole discussion around innovation and leadership is. So why is it significant, or what is it that is significant in innovation and creative leadership? And what are those components? Think about it for a second. What are the things that are laid out, or you would lay out, in order to be significant in innovation and creative leadership? And there should be some things that come to you almost kind of naturally or obviously, seeing how you've been in the workplace for some time, or exposure in a professional organization. And so some of these things should have been presented to you in some form or fashion. And then how do we then incorporate these elements into our own leadership theory? Because at this stage, as I alluded to in the previous class, we should have our own leadership theory at play. In other words, we should start to develop our own leadership theory versus just taking the theories that are presented to us and thinking that those are acceptable enough in the way of leadership and innovation. So, as always, let me know where you need assistance in whatever fashion of a class that there may be, and I'll be glad to assist you in regard to that. And so there's a small assignment here to incorporate today's thought process and lesson into your final project, if it's applicable. And it's just to create the creative juices, to further the creative juices of innovation and leadership, to try to infuse those things that kind of make sense in regard to wrapping up your final projects. And you can let me know if you have any questions whatsoever in regard to that. So here's your thought for today. With leaders of which great power is bestowed, great responsibility is expected.